The rain was falling in sheets that night, drenching the quiet streets and turning every street lamp into a halo of shimmering gold. A young woman stumbled along the sidewalk, soaked to the bone, shivering and on the verge of tears. He saw her from the window of his small apartment, the same one he shared with his little girl, and without thinking, he grabbed his coat and ran out into the storm. He didn't know who she was, or why she was out there in the pouring rain alone, but something in her desperation struck a chord deep inside him. He opened his door wide and called out, "Come on in. You're going to catch your death out there." She hesitated, looking like she wanted to refuse, but exhaustion and cold won over pride, and she stepped inside. That one moment would set off a chain of events none of them could have predicted. Before I dive deeper into this story, take a moment to hit subscribe and join the Kindness Teles family. If you enjoy heartfelt, real-life stories about human kindness, give this video a like and share your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing your stories of hope and compassion. He had been a single dad for 2 years now, after his wife had passed unexpectedly. His daughter, just 6, was the center of his world. Every day was a careful balancing act between his job as a waiter at a small downtown diner and raising a child who still asked too many questions about why mommy wasn't there. Life was quiet, sometimes lonely, and often exhausting. He came home each night with tired arms, a few dollars in his pocket, and the constant hum of worry about whether he was doing enough for his little girl. The apartment was modest, a second-floor unit with creaky stairs and the faint smell of last night's cooking, but it was home, and it was theirs. That evening, he had just finished washing the dishes and was stacking them to dry when he noticed her through the rain-streaked window. She looked fragile, small against the gray world outside, and she carried herself with a sort of guarded vulnerability that made him pause. There was something about the way she hunched her shoulders, dragging her feet through puddles, that struck him as painfully familiar. Maybe it was the tiredness, the way she seemed to shrink from the world, or maybe it was just the instinct of someone who had raised a child to recognize pain in another person. He shrugged into his coat, called for his daughter to stay inside, and went out into the storm. She looked startled when he opened the door. Are you okay?" he asked, voice barely carrying over the rain. She shook her head, too cold to speak, and he guided her inside, wrapping a spare blanket around her shivering shoulders. She smelled faintly of wet grass and something else he couldn't place, maybe the remnants of perfume or a cafe she had been running from. He set her by the heater, grabbed some towels, and made her some hot tea. She finally looked at him, eyes wide, almost apologetic, and whispered, "Thank you." That was it. Simple words, but they carried a weight that made him realize she needed more than just warmth, she needed someone to see her. His daughter, curious and shy, peeked from behind the couch and offered her favorite stuffed rabbit. The woman smiled faintly, tears glinting at the corners of her eyes, and accepted it. They sat together in the small living room, the rain drumming against the windows, and for a moment, the apartment felt warmer than it had in weeks. Conversation was minimal at first. She didn't share much about why she was out in the storm or where she was headed, and he didn't press. He had learned that sometimes kindness was simply showing up, being present, offering a safe space without demanding answers. After a while, she stood and shook out her hair, revealing a hint of nervous energy. She needed to go, she said softly, but she left a small, grateful smile behind. He didn't know it then, but those few minutes of safety and human connection were more significant than he could have imagined. Days passed, life continued with its usual rhythm of work, school drop-offs, and late-night diner shifts. The encounter with the woman lingered in his mind, a quiet warmth amidst the monotony of his days. Then came the day that changed everything. His daughter was watching the evening news, munching on a piece of toast, when the anchor introduced a story about a young woman who had been stranded in a sudden storm downtown. Images flickered across the screen, wet streets, umbrellas bending in the wind, and then the camera settled on the woman herself. His daughter froze, pointing at the screen. "Dad, that's her. That's the lady from our house," she exclaimed, eyes wide with excitement. His stomach dropped. It was true, the same woman, the same fragile, soaked figure, now smiling softly in the news clip as she recounted the kindness of a stranger who had helped her that night. He listened as the anchor explained that she had been a young professional on her way home from work when an unexpected downpour stranded her. She had no ride, no umbrella, no shelter, and was just about to give up when someone opened a door and invited her in. The news piece didn't name him, didn't show his face, but the warmth and safety she described matched his actions perfectly. And in that moment, he realized that even small acts of kindness ripple out far beyond what we ever expect. Later that night, he tucked his daughter into bed, feeling a strange mixture of pride and awe. She asked him if he thought she would remember that night forever, and he nodded. Some people never forget when someone shows them they matter, he said softly. It struck him then how much that brief encounter had mattered, not just to her, but to his own life. For a few minutes, he had been more than a tired waiter, more than a single dad juggling bills and bedtime stories. He had been a protector, a presence, a kind of guardian angel in the simplest, most human sense. The woman never came back to the apartment, and he never saw her in person again. Yet, her story stayed with him, a gentle reminder that kindness has no schedule, no requirements, and no guarantees. It is given freely, sometimes without recognition, and yet it can shape lives in ways we can never fully predict. He thought about how easily that moment could have been missed, how easily she could have walked past his door, unnoticed, uncared for. And he felt grateful that he hadn't looked away, that he hadn't hesitated, that he had chosen action over indifference. Months later, a letter arrived, postmarked from the city where she worked. It was brief but heartfelt. She wrote about how that night had restored her faith in people, how it reminded her that even in the darkest moments, there are strangers willing to offer warmth and safety. She didn't know his name, only the small details, the coat he had worn, the way he had wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, the kindness in his eyes. She ended the note by saying she hoped, somehow, he knew the difference he had made. His daughter ran her fingers over the envelope, smiling shyly. "You saved her, Dad," she whispered. And he realized that the act of kindness had become a story they shared, a bond that extended beyond their little family, connecting them to a stranger in ways neither could have planned. He often reflects on that night now, thinking about the countless times we pass by opportunities to help, too busy, too tired, or too caught up in our own worlds. But he knows something powerful, the smallest gestures, offering a coat, a cup of tea, a few moments of safety, can be life-changing. And sometimes, the world notices in ways we never anticipate, through news stories, letters, or simply the smile of a little girl who sees her dad as a hero. Life, he understands, is made of these fleeting connections, these moments of humanity, and the choice to act with kindness. Every time it rains, he remembers that night. The sound of raindrops against the window, the smell of wet pavement, the shiver of a stranger walking alone, they all bring him back to that fleeting, unforgettable encounter. He realizes that kindness is not about recognition or reward, but about showing up, even when no one is watching. It is the courage to open your door, to offer warmth, to be a safe place in a world that can feel indifferent. And in giving, we receive more than we ever imagined, not in material wealth, but in a sense of connection, purpose, and quiet joy that lingers long after the storm has passed. In the end, the story of a single dad and a young woman in the rain reminds us that human connection matters. A single act of generosity can touch someone so deeply that it echoes far beyond that moment. It teaches us that empathy and compassion are not abstract ideals, they are daily choices, small and mighty gestures that can alter someone's path forever. And it inspires us to look around, to notice the people who might be struggling, to offer a hand, a smile, or a kind word. Because in that simple act, we give hope, safety, and the reminder that kindness is always worth it. So the next time you have the chance to help, even in a small way, remember that your actions can ripple farther than you can see, and that every drop of kindness matters in a world that desperately needs it. Share your own stories of kindness in the comments, and let's keep reminding each other that even the smallest light can make the darkest night feel safe.